I would say that if you were a chemist or a biochemist, you ought to be the first one to be in church.
Ha ha! That's a good opening salvo. All right, Doug.
Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
And your co-host Rich Gear here as well. And that is a very interesting salvo. So how do you follow that up, Doug?
Well, today we're going to be talking about undersea smokers. And this is the evolution story of how life might have become prominent on the Earth.
From an evolutionary standpoint.
From an evolutionary standpoint. Right. It's one of their possible scenarios of how life could have gotten started. And I wanted to read a little bit of what they say on the ANEC.org website, which is a biology website, and it's supposed to explain evolution. And it's really amazing what they're trying to get you to believe.
Yes, it's a pro-evolutionary site, yeah. Right? Okay.
So it says underwater alkaline hydrothermal vents, also known as white smokers or the white chimney, were discovered in the 1970s. And the abundance of life in these environments caught the attention of scientists and led to the proposal of how new theories regarding the origin of life. One of the most plausible theories was that life originated at alkaline hydrothermal vents or white smokers in the ocean floor. Okay, and so unlike underwater volcanic vents, alkaline hydrothermal vents did not come into contact with the superheated magma directly. They were located several kilometers away from the seafloor spreading regions. And the seawater infiltrated into the cracks of the rocks and got heated by scorching olivine at depths of several kilometers. The heated seawater released alkaline fluids containing gases from the cracks with temperatures around 100 degrees centigrade. When the fluids cooled down, elements like calcium, magnesium, iron, nickel, and sulfur precipitated above the hydrothermal vents to form white mineral structures known as white chimneys, or white smokers. The sponge-like interconnected cavities in these chimneys ranged in size from hundreds of micrometers to millimeters. They acted as barriers to separate acidic seawater from the alkaline fluids, much as like cell membranes. Okay. As warm seawater continuously rose from the cracks, hydrogen, methane, ammonia, and seawater seeped from the bottom to the top of the chimneys through porous structures. Inside these tiny cavities, the fluid was warm and alkaline, pH about 9, while the exterior was acidic, seawater, due to high carbon dioxide levels in Hadean oceans. Okay, the Hadean would have been the era of Precambrian, way before life was supposed to evolve.
Is that part of Precambrian, or is that before Precambrian?
It's supposed to be the earliest part.
The earliest part of Precambrian, okay. Which is the earliest supposed age of the Earth based on evolutionary scenarios. Okay.
So they say through compartmentalization, high concentration reactants, warm seawater, proton gradient, and iron sulfur catalysts, nature took its first step in chemical evolution within the hydrothermal chimneys. Simple organic compounds such as amino acids, nucleotides, fatty acids, and thioesters could be synthesized within...
Wait, stop. That word "could" frames all the rest of this thing. Mm-hmm. So he was reading it kind of there's a lot of information here, but that "could" frames the whole thing. Anyway, continue, Doug.
Could be synthesized within the cavities of the top of the rocks. Thioesters and phosphates produced acetyl phosphates to store energy from proton gradient. They served as precursors to ATP and drove the initial biochemical reactions. Due to thermophoresis, these organic compounds tend to be aggregate within the cavities of the top of the chimney. When their concentrations become high enough, they easily form peptides. Easily, okay. Short chain RNA and vesicles within bilayer membranes. These vesicles continuously absorbed organic materials, grew, and then budded off into smaller vesicles. Holy, what a whopper of a lie!
That was a mouthful, Doug. All right, so we need to soundbite this a little bit for those who are falling asleep or those who are just basically kind of feel like. What is it like the Peanuts cartoon character, the kids when the adults are talking wah 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 wah. So let's soundbite that and put this in a framework. And I stopped you there because the rest of it was all like this is happening, and they have observed this, and they have not observed this. Is that correct?
Yeah. First of all, they said simple organic compounds such as amino acids, nucleotides, and fatty acids. There's nothing simple about any of these. And the big problem is that if you want to go from amino acid to a protein, you've got to combine the amino acids together. They need to be in the left-handed variety in order to combine. And you have to remove a water molecule to make the amino acids into a peptide. And then you've got to make sure that they're in the right order when you put them together in order to make a protein which has the enzyme properties that will catalyze the reactions. Now, none of these things actually are possible to come about by chance because the odds of getting purified left-handed amino acids. It's not been seen in nature. If you make amino acids out of the simpler, like methane, ammonia, and hydrogen gas, that's they come into left-handed and right-handed varieties, and so to purify them into the left-handed version, which only life uses, it's a process that's the more amino acids that you have in a protein, the less possible odds of it ever happening.
The simplest ones are very complicated, aren't they? Even the simplest proteins are very. There's a lot of information.
Well, you have average might be 400. Some of the larger ones like be 2,500 amino acids.
Wow!
And to get them all in the right order and the right conformation, and then once you have the amino acid chain put together, there's weak bonds that fold them up into a three-dimensional structure.
That is really amazing, yeah.
And this three-dimensional structure is what gives the activity to these proteins.
So what gets me done is when you read through that, like I say, they did preface it with it could do this, but then the rest of it was all like it happened, like they've observed it, like they've seen it. And they have never seen this. This has never been done. In fact, everything in science that we can observe and see, the laws of science seem to contradict everything about this. They're trying to figure out spontaneous generation. And isn't that what they're trying to figure out?
That's right. And what started me on this was I was researching the last show that we did about finding Mars rocks that showed some inorganic compounds that could, according to them, could only come about if there was life nearby.
Yeah.
And so apparently some of these same inorganic compounds are what they find in these hydrothermal smokers.
Okay.
And that's where they're trying to equivocate the origin of life on Mars with the origin of life on Earth. Okay. Except in Mars you have a desert situation. You don't have an ocean where you have these environments, and so the question is, well, how do you get now? One of the problems with combining amino acids, of course, is removing the water molecule.
Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Removing the water molecule binds the two amino acids together in a peptide bond. But If you put it in water, well, it says, there's some water here. I can put the water back where it belongs, and now we have our simple amino acids again.
Those amino acids, right?
Those mean old acids,
Yeah.
good grief. They're going to misbehave and disassociate and break apart, and you're not going to have an active protein.
See, every scenario they come up with, Doug, it seems like they come up like when they had the reducing atmospheres, or they figure out water on Mars or water on. They're trying to say because we need water, that water found here proves that life could evolve spontaneously, even though Mars is really a desert planet. I have no problem with the idea that there's water. Could have been water on Mars at some time, even a huge amount of water. I have no problem that maybe some of the outer planets or outer systems, because the Scripture tells us everything was made out of water anyway. Everything in the physical universe was made out of water anyway. When he stretched it out, it seems to be a reasonable inference. But none of that allows for life to spontaneously form. In fact, would you say when a water molecule comes in, the amino acids break down or they separate out? They do not.
You need water, but the water is an enemy to the reaction.
And the exact same thing. Yeah, that we've run with everything. Unless everything works, nothing works. And that's the point. Without water, we cannot survive. Yet water destroys anything from beginning to start from the first place. That's a big, big obstacle to come in. And the reality is that evolutionary scenarios, those people who subscribe to the religion of materialism, can only have matter and energy. And without some guiding informational, some outside thing deciding how it's going to work, it will not work. It will not happen. The water is necessary for life, but water is totally unnecessary to start life, as far as from a random materialistic way. What do you say?
Yeah, and not only that, the researchers, the chemists, can't hide behind millions of years, because either you have life or you don't.
It's either is or isn't.
Either it is, and so it's instantaneous. It turns from non-life to life. And so, what is that causes that switch to be turned on?
Maybe Doug, maybe Doug got close years ago when we had pet rocks. Sorry, I couldn't. I had to throw a little levity in there. Sorry, go ahead. I really messed him up when I did that. So I apologize. I couldn't resist it. Couldn't resist it.
Well,
anyway, go ahead. Continue, Doug.
But the thing of it is, you have to be able to explain how this life could have been turned on in that instant.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if it comes in an instant, and you can't hide behind millions of years of gathering all this stuff. You have to say, well, at one point in time, we had a concentration of all these chemicals that came together, and they formed life all at once. And so you should be able to simulate that condition, and you can't hide behind the fact that you can't do it because over millions of years. It was according to them that's possible only if you have millions of years.
Right. They need that. They need that because no one has ever observed any of this happening. Okay, these smokers do not reveal anything. They're just surmising. What we used to call those just so stories. Yeah. They're making things up. But they start out. They get a little word "could" in there, and then the rest of it is like it's a fait accompli that it actually has been observed, and it has not been.
Now I have a link here to a website called anec.org, and here it explains all these different steps that need to happen in order for life to evolve from non-life. And then it talks about once you have it, then you have to explain prokaryotes and eukaryotes, the different kinds of bacteria, and the simple life evolving into complex life. And they sort of make that list on this website in a simple form where they try to show you that this is something. So anyway, that is the way this particular website talks about it. It gives this explanation in simple ways where people end up thinking, well, it is simple. It's why can't you believe that this happened? Because there's all this stuff, you find these fossils, and the fossils actually explain the millions of years, and if you put it in this sequence here on this chart, you should be able to understand how evolution works. Well, you can memorize that and get your A on your test in your evolution class, but if you want to actually apply some thinking to it, you're going to end up and if you understand this chemistry of what's going on behind the scenes, and you try it yourself,
yes,
it isn't going to work. Here's what it says a little bit about sometimes peptides encapsulated iron sulfide compounds to form a special structure that could catalyze biochemical reactions and embed themselves within the lipid vesicles. The biochemical reactions from the rocks were transferred into the vesicles, leading to the emergence of increasingly complex organic compounds and metabolism. By chance, several iron sulfide proteins aligned together to allow the sequential transfer of electrons until they were neutralized by hydrogen ions. The alkalinity inside the vesicles increased, and the hydrogen ions outside tended to enter the interior. If there were iron channels in certain membrane proteins, they could utilize the concentration gradient to perform additional functions, such as producing the simple high-energy compound acetylphosphate, which is ATP.
Yeah, I was going to say,
so they're trying to explain all these different chemicals.
This sounds very similar to what the smoker thing was. It sounds very similar to what they were saying. Okay.
Well, that's what they're saying, is that they're trying to explain how some of these chemical reactions would work. This is all nonsense. It's complete nonsense.
And why do you say it's nonsense, Doug?
Well, none of this, it's just saying that it could happen. But they've never been able to.
Observation, reproduction, and definitely not repeatable.
So you can't repeatable. You go down thousands of feet and down the undersea area to perform your experiments around these hydrothermal vents.
Yep.
So nobody's going to try to reproduce this experiment. There's no experiment that's taking place that tries to emulate this. And so this is really all made up stuff. They're just trying to explain it. It's not anything that's validated by any biochemical process that makes any sense to me.
See, there's so much gobbledygook in here. The average guy listens to what you're just reading, and you're kind of going, what did you just say? Okay, I guess it's okay. These guys must know what they're talking about. This is what happens with authoritarian type of scenarios when you basically use your authority, your street cred, if you will, your bona fides, as they say, to basically browbeat or intimidate or just override any objection. Luckily, we have a lot of PhDs on our side that know this is a lot of nonsense.
Right, and people like John Sanford,
yes,
who is a geneticist from Cornell. He is the one who invented the gene gun, and be able to work with doing. I wouldn't say GMOs, because that has a nasty connotation.
It's a negative connotation, yeah.
What it is that's actually grafting.
Okay.
Is what it's doing
all right.
On a molecule sense. And so, that's really what genetic modification is you're doing some grafting. You're taking some materials from one organism and grafting it onto another organism. But we have a lot of people who, like Dr. James Tour, who is a synthetic chemist.
Oh.
And he is a fellow who has a website who puts up all these different problems with the origin of life scenario. And he has challenged organic chemists to come up with answers to this question.
Yeah, because I remember, like, Doug, it must have been 40 years ago. There was a guy, so probably maybe some of the scenarios have changed, but he had this top 10 reasons why life couldn't start. And he started with the oxygen and the primordial atmosphere, and every step was blocked. He said, okay, well, I'll give you that step. And then the next, that was blocked. And everything to create life was basically blocked in every step. It was like there was like 9 or 10 steps. Do you remember that? What it was? I remember we saw the guy.
Yeah, his name was Michael Gerard, and that was around 1990.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, and I still was stunned about it. I mean, he put it in such a nice, soundbite type of a format. You really went, wow, that cannot happen. That could not happen. We just gave one with the idea of the reducing atmosphere. We talked about with the Miller-Urey experiment, trying to produce life in the 50s. People still use that thing, and life was produced in a test tube. But the whole idea of the reducing atmosphere has turned out to be bogus because the earliest rocks, according to their scenarios, are oxygen impregnated, and oxygen destroys life from happening. Just like water is a disabler, so is oxygen. What do you think? You take all these things and try to get rid of free radicals. That's oxygen that's been, I'm being simple, but it breaks your thing down, rust, those kinds of things. So that was just the very beginning stage. The only idea, how does a rock become a non-rock? God. There's nothing else that really works as far as that happens. There has to be something outside of space and time that's made this thing happen. They will not allow a supernatural foot in the door, Doug. So they come up with these scenarios that just are, like you said, nonsense.
Now, the next paragraph here is kind of fun because
let's go for
it. They're going for the RNA world now.
All right.
RNA is considered to be the original genetic material because of its simple structure. It's not simple.
It's not simple.
Jeez. Ability to record genetic information that catalyze protein synthesis. And so RNA did not easily form double strands, and it tends to fold. Inside the vesicles, some RNA folded into a specific shape to catalyze protein synthesis. How on earth did that happen without RNA, ribosomal RNA, or
because there's transfer
RNA, messenger
RNA,
and ribosomal RNA.
Okay, there's 3 different. Yeah.
Well, there's a bunch of other RNAs.
Okay, all right.
But okay, so they figured that this lattice structure of the smoker helped in doing that. If they could perfectly coordinate with the vesicle division, they gained an advantage in competition and gradually eliminated other vesicles.
Now, what's a vesicle again?
Oh, it's a membrane.
All right, okay, fine, okay.
All right. The protocells are formed. Oh, they just stated they formed. Okay. The double helix structure of DNA provided stability to genetic information, and so they assumed the double helix now came about, and so some vesicles use DNA to produce RNA for protein synthesis, allowing to gain an advantage in competition and eventually become dominant. And then these early cells evolved proton pumps and flagella, enabling them to leave the hydrothermal vents. All these processes took place within the cavities of rocks. They were waiting for an opportunity to leave.
So they ascribe intelligence that we're planning.
This is the Chronicles of Nonsense,
Chronicles of Nonsense. Okay, all right.
And then you have the last universal common ancestors. And so from there, all of life evolved. Guess what? And so you have dinosaurs, and you have birds, and you have reptiles, and you have mammals, and you have all these different things coming.
Everything from amoebas to man, right?
Everything. What do you think, Rich? You think that they've got something here that should really pull the wool over eyes?
Well, it will pull the wool over people's eyes. What's really amazing about all of these scenarios, they come up here, they obfuscate the obvious reality that life can never come from non-life. They propose these scenarios, and every step along the way, They propose things that never has been observed. They can't repeat it. They can't duplicate it even in a lab, which would all of that would prove even they could that it took intelligence to do it, not random chance and accidental plans. So, my opinion. Obviously, everyone out here would know my opinion of this kind of nonsense. But when you're reading that stuff, I'm getting a glazed donut look, man. My eyes going, wow, what are you? What? But when you explain some of this, I go, no, that cannot happen. But a lot of people will be fooled by this because it sounds so scientific. And this is what we find out. There's a lot of obfuscation. There's a lot of, I think, bait and switch things. They'll like the word "could" was framed just one little thing, and then the rest of it was like written like it all has happened. And it's every time you see anything with the millions of years or life from non-life or the evolution of anything, they always come up with these stories that sound plausible. And you say, I can imagine. Okay, a classic example, Doug. How do you get something transferred from, let's say, speciation, variety within things you see, to something changing to something you have never seen before? That's never been observed. Speciation, you see it all the time. The idea, but they're entirely different fundamental processes, but they use them and they link them together, just like they're doing things. We see the smokers. Yeah. We see the some particular chemicals. We see that, and then they join that together with something that we have never seen, and that's how it happens all the time. You put something together, and then you make this leap into something that is not verifiable in any way, shape, or form.
Talk about leap of faith,
Yeah, I know. What's that one book says? I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. I mean, it's really what it is. And Darwinian, make no mistake about it, people in the church. Darwinian thinking always, almost inevitably leads to atheism. Maybe you will survive, but your kids won't. Okay? This is what's so sad about a lot of this stuff, the generation, the legacy you leave. When you open up the doors to these kinds of stuff, eliminating what the biblical clear text tells you is true, then you get in trouble. You get in a lot of trouble. And a lot of it's based on what authority do you subscribe to? The biblical authority or man-made authority?
Now, it's interesting that you are able to observe all the different arguments against Christianity. And what you see is that people will hop from one discipline to another, from chemistry to biochemistry to
paleontology, cosmology.
Biologists will appeal to the geologists.
Yep.
The geologists appeal to the paleontologists. The paleontologists will appeal to astronomy, and the thigh
bone's connected to the chip. Sorry, that just reminded that song. It's one that connects to another one.
These questions have been answered. They have reasonable explanations for all of these different questions.
Absolutely.
So reasonable answers, and I challenge you to think through your whole philosophy and figure out for yourself if it actually makes sense to you from a scientific standpoint, and distinguish between what is real science and what is really
what's gobbledygook,
what's speculation or just those stories. That that's the problem with our evolutionary thinking in our society, is that people can't tell the difference between real experimental empirical science and just stories about what the people think might have happened. Can't go back in time and reproduce the experiment.
Absolutely not. Nope.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our show tonight about Undersea Smokers, and we'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.